The rain pours relentlessly onto the old cemetery, where drops tap against tombstones, and the wind rustles through the bare branches of trees. At the center of this somber landscape stands a modest grave with the inscription, John Wick, loving husband. Before it appears Winston, dressed in his usual elegant suit but without an umbrella. Rain streams down his face, leaving wet streaks on his cheeks. In his hands, he holds a bouquet of white lilies, which seem too delicate for such a place. He places the flowers on the grave, but his movements are slow, as if he's hesitating. His gaze is restless, and doubt lingers in his eyes. Winston mutters quietly to himself, "You were always too stubborn to just give up, weren't you, Jonathan?" His words hang in the air, unanswered. Only the sound of the rain responds. Suddenly, the roar of a car engine shatters the silence. Hand headlights pierce through the fog in the distance. Winston turns sharply, his posture tensing, and he quickly walks away, disappearing into the dusk, leaving the grave alone under the downpour. On the tombstone, a raindrop washes away dirt, revealing a crack in the stone, a subtle hint that John's death might not be as final as it seems. Meanwhile, in the underworld of New York, the Bowery King sits in his headquarters, an abandoned subway station, where flickering lamps cast shadows on walls covered with city maps and old newspapers headlined with chaos following the fall of the High Table. Pigeons coo in their cages, adding a chaotic hum to the atmosphere. The king looks exhausted, his coat is tattered, his beard grayer than before, but the same determination burns in his eyes. He speaks with his assistant, a young man named Tick, who holds a battered tablet with a dim screen. Tick shifts nervously from foot to foot as he reports, "Boss, our people in Paris saw him, a man in a black suit, bearded, limping near the canal. They say it was him." The king lets out a raspy laugh, brushing it off. "Him? John Wick? That guy's dead. Winston told me himself." But Tick doesn't back down, his voice growing insistent. "What if he's not? What if the High Table lied? They declared him dead to cover their tracks." The king falls silent, his face darkening. He rises from his chair, leaning heavily on the table, and approaches the pigeon cage. Opening it, he releases a bird, with a hastily written note tied to its leg. The pigeon flies off into the tunnel's darkness as the king turns back to Tick, saying, "If it's true, if he's alive, the High Table will pay double. Find me proof." Tick nods and disappears into the depths of the station, leaving the king alone, staring after the pigeon. His thoughts clearly drift to John, a man he respected, but whose death he still can't accept. The scene shifts to a remote monastery in the mountains, perhaps the Alps or the Carpathians, where the air is cold and silence reigns, broken only by the wind chiming against stone walls. Inside the monastery, in a dimly lit room with rough wooden benches, lies John Wick. His face is pale, his beard thick and unkempt, his chest wrapped in coarse bandages soaked with blood. He looks like a ghost, weak, yet still alive. Above him stands an old monk in dark robes with a hood, his trembling hands changing the bandage. John's eyes snap open, his breathing ragged, his hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that isn't there. The monk whispers softly, "You're safe, Jardani. Your path isn't over yet." John tries to sit up, but pain forces him back onto the hard bed. He rasps, "Where am I? Who are you?" The monk doesn't answer directly, instead placing an old medal engraved with the Ruska Roma symbol, the organization that backed him in his duel with the Marquis, before him. "Those who know your name," the monk says, stepping back into the shadows. John clutches the medal, his gaze sharpening as memories flood back. The fall near Sacré-Cœur, the gunshots, the blood. He realizes he survived, though he doesn't know how or why. Back in New York, the Bowery King receives a new message from his informants. Tick returns, holding a photograph taken in Paris, a blurry shot of a man in black limping near the Saint-Martin Canal. The king stares at it for a long time before tossing it onto the table, saying, "It's him, damn it, it's him." His voice trembles with a mix of relief, anger, and anticipation. He turns to Tick. Tell our people in Europe, find him, and let Winston know his grave might be empty. The chapter ends as John, in the monastery, slowly rises from the bed, gripping the wall. His eyes burn with resolve, though his body remains weak. The monk watches from the shadows, murmuring, "The shadows of the past don't let go so easily, Giordani." John doesn't reply, only tightens his grip on the metal, feeling that his fight is far from over. In the remote mountain monastery, a cold silence prevails, broken only by the crackling of a fire in a rough stone hearth. John Wick lies on a hard wooden bed, his chest still wrapped in coarse bandages, his face pale and slick with sweat from the pain. He awakens abruptly, his breathing hoarse and uneven, his eyes opening with the expression of a man escaping a nightmare. His hands instinctively search for a weapon, finding only the cold stone wall beside him. Above him stands the old monk in dark hooded robes, his wrinkled hands holding a bowl of warm water and a clean cloth. The monk notices John's movement and speaks softly. "Easy, Giordani, you're among friends." John jerks his head toward him, his gaze piercing the old man, but he lacks the strength to rise. He collapses back, stifling a groan. "Who are you? Where am I?" he rasps, his voice faint but tense. The monk takes his time responding, carefully changing the bandage on John's chest, where deep bullet scars are visible. "We are those who know your true name," he finally says, placing the old Ruska Roma medal, a circle with crossed swords, before John. John grips it in his palm, his fingers trembling as memories flare in his mind. The duel with the Marquis, the gunshots, the fall near Sacré-Cœur, the darkness. He whispers, "How did I survive?" The monk sits beside him, his voice deepening. "We found you at the bottom of the stairs. Blood flowed like a river, but you were breathing. Ruska Roma ordered us to save Giordani Jovanovic. Your fate is not yet complete." John falls silent, staring at the medal. His thoughts tangle. He recalls how the high table declared him free after the duel. But he also remembers Winston's words about freedom in their world, always coming at a price. The monk continues, "They think you're dead. The high table spread the word across the globe. John Wick died in Paris, but your freedom is their lie." John lifts his gaze, his eyes narrowing. "Who?" he asks tersely. The monk sighs, as if hesitant, but answers, "Eleonora Vespucci, the new voice of the high table. She wants to erase your legacy, destroy everyone who helped you. Your death is just the beginning for her." The name Eleonora stirs a faint memory in John. He'd heard of her once, back when he worked for the table, a cold-blooded strategist who always stayed in the shadows. He clenches his fist, the pain in his chest giving way to the familiar fire of anger. The monk rises and gestures for John to follow. Strength returns slowly, and John, leaning on the wall, follows through a narrow monastery corridor that smells of damp earth and incense. They enter a small room where his old suit lies on a table, tattered but washed, beside a pistol with a spare magazine. "Your past awaits," the monk says, stepping back. John touches the suit, feeling its weight, and realizes his return is inevitable. He dresses, each movement painful, but his form gradually regains its familiar solidity. The monk watches silently, then adds, "Your allies are in danger. The Bowery King, Sophia, Kane, Eleonora has already sent her dogs after them." The names hit John like blows. People who risked their lives for him, now threatened because of him. He checks the pistol, clicking the slide, and asks quietly, "Where is she?" The monk shakes his head. "She's not easily found. But Ruska Roma in Berlin awaits you. Your path begins there." John nods, his face resolute. He pockets the medal and says, "Then, I'm going." Meanwhile, outside the monastery, rumors of John begin to spread. In Paris, two high-table mercenaries sit in a dark bar, reviewing a report on Wick's death. One, a tall man with a scar across his eye, tosses the papers onto the table. He's dead. And we're still chasing ghosts. Eleonora wants us to check everyone. Bowery, Winston, even that woman from Morocco. The other, younger, nervously twirls a knife in his hands. What if he's alive? You saw what he did to the Marquise. The older man laughs. But tension laces his voice. If he's alive, we're all dead men, but orders are orders. Their conversation cuts off as the bartender drops a newspaper on the table with the headline, "Mysterious Disappearance of Body in Paris." The mercenaries exchange glances, and the older one mutters, "Damn it, this is bad." Back at the monastery, John stands at the door leading outside. Beyond it lie snow-covered mountains and a narrow path downward. The monk places a hand on his shoulder. "Jardani Jovanovic is not just a killer. You're the one who changes the rules. Don't forget that." John doesn't reply, only nods and takes his first step into the cold. His form is frail, but each movement restores his strength. He knows the high table has dragged him back into the game, but this time, he's not just surviving, he's going after those who disturbed his peace. At the high table's headquarters in Rome, a tense silence reigns. Eleonora Vespucci, a tall woman with sharp features and cold gray eyes, stands before a massive dark wooden table where the organization's other leaders sit. Her black suit is impeccable, her voice like steel as she declares, "John Wick is dead, but his shadow still threatens us. Everyone who helped him is a weak link. They must be eliminated." Her words spark whispers among those present, but no one objects. Eleonora places a list of names on the table: the Bowery King, Sophia Al-Azwar, Kane, Akira. They know too much, and if the rumors are true, if he's alive, they'll be the first he goes to, she adds. Her fingers gripping the pen so tightly, her knuckles whiten. One leader, an old man with a raspy voice, asks, "And Winston?" "He's back running the Continental in New York." Eleonora offers a thin, dangerous smile. "Winston is useful for now, but his time will come." She orders her agents, ruthless mercenaries known as the Grey Blades, to begin the hunt. Her goal is clear: erase John Wick's legacy by destroying everyone who stood by him. In New York, the Bowery King senses a storm approaching. He stands in his underground headquarters at the abandoned subway station, where pigeons coo in cages and his people bustle, checking weapons. Tick, his young assistant, rushes in with a worried look. "Boss, our informant spotted Grey Blades in the city. They're coming for you." The king snorts, but anger flares in his eyes. "Let them come. I won't hide from Eleonora's jackals," he replies, grabbing his shotgun. Suddenly, an explosion tears through the tunnel entrance, and mercenaries in gray cloaks burst in, their movements swift and precise. A chaotic firefight erupts. The king fires his shotgun, blasting enemies apart, while his pigeons take flight in panic, adding to the confusion. A blade throws a knife that hits Tick in the shoulder, but the king shoots the attacker down. He shouts to his crew, "Send the birds, warn everyone still alive." As the fight rages, a pigeon with a note escapes the tunnel, carrying word of the danger. The king retreats deeper into the station, his coat riddled with bullet holes, but he's alive and determined to fight back. Meanwhile, in Morocco, Sophia Al-Azwar sits in her Continental, sipping tea from a small cup. Her loyal Malinois dogs lie nearby, ears perked in alertness. The atmosphere is calm, but her eyes betray unease. She knows the high table won't forgive her role in John's affairs. Her instincts prove right when the hotel doors explode open, and Grey Blades storm in. Sophia reacts instantly. "Take them," she commands her dogs, tossing the cup to the floor. The animals lunge at the attackers, tearing throats and sowing chaos as Sophia opens fire with dual pistols. Blood stains the marble floor, and her guests, smugglers and mercenaries, join the fray, defending their sanctuary. A blade reaches her, but Sophia dodges a knife strike and snaps his neck in one motion. She rasps, "Tell Eleonora I'm not John. I don't die that easily." Her Continental holds, but Sophia knows this is just the first wave. In a quiet Japanese village, Kane, the blind assassin once John's enemy and later ally, spends time with his daughter. They sit at a table where she draws flowers, and he listens to her soft laughter. His peace shatters when he hears twigs snap outside. His heightened senses detect danger. "Hide," he whispers to his daughter, grabbing his cane that conceals a blade. The door splinters under a blow. Gray blades burst in. Kane moves like a whirlwind. His cane slices through the air, piercing one attacker's throat, his hearing guiding him to dodge gunfire. He fights silently, but fiercely, protecting his daughter hiding under the table. A mercenary tosses a smoke grenade, forcing Kane to retreat, grabbing his daughter's hand. They flee into the forest, but he knows the blades won't stop. "Daddy, why do they want us?" she asks, her voice trembling. Kane squeezes her hand. "Because of a man I couldn't kill." The scene shifts to Japan, where John Wick, fresh from the monastery, arrives in Tokyo. His suit is tattered, his gait unsteady, but his eyes burn with purpose: to find Akira, Koji's daughter, whom he promised to protect. He enters a quiet dojo, where Akira trains with a sword, her movements swift, precise, and fueled by anger. She notices John and stops, her gaze piercing him. "You're alive," she says coldly, lowering her blade. "But my father isn't." John nods, his voice quiet. "I'm sorry about Koji, but I'm here to warn you, the high table is coming for you." Their conversation is cut short as the dojo walls explode, and gray blades attack. Akira reacts instantly, her sword cleaving the first assailant, while John fires the pistol he took from the monastery. They fight side by side. Akira cuts down foes with samurai grace. John shoots with calculated precision. The battle ends as the last blade falls, the dojo ablaze. Akira turns to John, breathing heavily. "I'll help you, but when this is over, you help me find who ordered my father's death." John nods. "Deal." They walk away from the burning dojo, united by a shared goal. After the Tokyo battle, John Wick and Akira leave the flaming dojo behind, smoke rising thickly into the night sky, debris scattered across the ground. John leads the way, his stride still slightly unsteady from his wounds, but his grip on the pistol is firm. Akira follows, her sword sheathed, her face resolute though her eyes flicker with the pain of losing her father. They head to Berlin, where, according to the monks, Ruska Roma awaits John and can offer shelter. The journey passes in silence. John focused on the road, Akira occasionally glancing at him, unsure whether to fully trust him. They finally reach an old industrial district, where an unassuming brick building stands among abandoned warehouses, adorned with a faded Ruska Roma symbol, a circle with crossed swords.
No way back, I know it's true, I'm lost to you. Like a midnight rain, every touch is on my veins. Tell me now, do you feel it too? I'm lost in you, I'm lost in you. I'm drowning deep in find shore, you pull me in, I need it more. No way back, I know it's true, I'm lost to you, I'm lost to you. I'm drowning deep, can't find the shore, you pull me in.
Save me, sleep, don't let go tonight. Drown me alive. Only like whisper, I'll take time. Lying to save time. Sing me to sleep and me drift away. For your voice where the memories stay. Sing me to sleep, don't let go tonight. Wrap me in echoes, drown me alive. Sing me to sleep and me drift away.
A burly man with tattooed arms opens the door, nodding silently at John in recognition. Giordani, he mutters, letting them inside. The building reveals itself as a fortified base, walls lined with weapons from pistols to crossbows, a long table at the center where several Ruska Roma members sit, hardened fighters with stern faces. At the head stands a middle-aged woman with short gray hair and a scar across her brow, named Maria. She rises, her gaze piercing John. "You're back, Giordani. We thought Paris was your grave." John places the medal on the table, his voice low but firm. "I was saved. But the high table is after everyone who helped me." Maria nods, as if expecting this, and gestures for them to sit. Akira remains standing, hand on her sword hilt. But Maria pays it no mind. "Eleonora Vespucci," she says, tossing a photo of a cold woman in a black suit onto the table. "She took power after the Marquise, ambitious, ruthless. She wants to destroy everything tied to you." John clenches his fist, his thoughts drifting to the allies already suffering. Suddenly, the door opens, and Cain enters, the blind assassin with his cane in hand. His daughter clings to his side, her eyes wide with fear. Cain stops, his head tilting slightly toward John. He recognizes him by his breathing. "Wick," he says hoarsely, his voice thick with mixed emotions. John stands, nodding. "Cain." Tension hangs between them, their past in Osaka, where Cain killed Koji, still a barrier. Akira spins sharply, her hand gripping her sword, but John halts her with a gesture. "He's not an enemy here," he whispers. Cain sits, his daughter hiding behind him, and explains, "They came for us, gray blades. I barely got her out." His fingers tighten on his cane, and he adds, "I knew you were alive. Only you could stir this nest." Maria cuts in. "The high table is weaker than it seems. Eleonora rules it with an iron fist, but many doubt her. This is our chance." John listens, his mind focused. The Bowery King, Sophia, Winston, all in danger because of him. As Ruska Roma prepares weapons, in New York, Winston stands in the rebuilt Continental, gazing at the city through a tall window. His suit is impeccable, but his eyes betray fatigue. Charon, his loyal concierge, approaches and says quietly, "The king's birds arrived. He's alive, and the blades are attacking." Winston offers a faint smile. "Jonathan was always a problem for us all." He pulls out an old phone and dials a number he knows by heart. The Bowery King's voice crackles through, hoarse from battle. "Winston, you heard? He's back." Winston replies, "I heard. And I know where Eleonora's weak. Her headquarters in Rome. It's the heart of her power." The king laughs. "Then tell him to go there. I'll hold things down here." Winston hangs up, his gaze hardening. He knows John needs him, but he can't openly defy the high table yet. In Berlin, John, Akira, and Cain sit with Maria to plan their next move. Maria unfolds a map of Rome, pointing to an ancient palace. "This is where Eleonora holds her meetings. If we strike hard." Cain nods. "I know its corridors. I was there when I served the table." His voice is calm, but guilt lingers in it. Akira finally sits, her anger toward Cain fading under the weight of their shared purpose. "I want her head," she says quietly, and John replies, "You'll get it, but first, we stop them." Maria adds, "Ruska Roma will give you men and weapons, but this is your fight, Giordani." John stares at the map, his fingers brushing the marked palace. He feels old rage returning, mingling with a desire to protect those still left. John, Akira, and Cain prepare to leave. Maria hands John a new pistol, heavy, engraved with the Ruska Roma symbol. "Your past and your future," she says. John takes it, his face unreadable, but a fire sparks in his eyes. Akira checks her sword. Cain grips his cane, and Cain's daughter whispers, "You'll come back, Daddy?" He strokes her hair, "I promise." The trio exits the base, leaving Ruska Roma behind, ready for war with Eleonora. In New York, Winston gazes at the city. Holding a glass of whiskey, and whispers to himself, "The time of old friends has come." The night in Rome is quiet. A light breeze rustling leaves in the gardens of the ancient palace where the high table holds its secret meetings. Perched on a hill, its stone walls are fortified with modern security, armed gray blades patrolling the perimeter with automatics. Inside, Eleonora Vespucci sits at a massive dark wooden table, her cold gray eyes alight with confidence as she listens to a subordinate's report. The attacks on Wick's allies failed. The Bowery king fought back. Sophia holds Morocco. Kane vanished. Her face doesn't flinch, but her fingers grip the table's edge. "He's alive," she says softly, as if confirming her suspicions. "Find him, or I'll find someone who will." Her voice cuts the air, and the subordinate hurries out, leaving Eleonora alone with her thoughts. She rises, approaches the window, and stares at the city, sensing her power is at risk. Outside the palace, John Wick, Akira, and Kane prepare their assault with a small Ruska Roma team, 5 heavily armed fighters. John stands by a tree, checking his Ruska Roma pistol, his breathing steady though his wounds still ache. Akira sharpens her sword beside him, her movements quick and precise, her eyes blazing with vengeance. Kane stands apart, his cane resting calmly in his hand, but his ears catch every sound: rustling leaves, guards' footsteps, a distant car horn. A Ruska Roma fighter, a young man named Victor, approaches John. The main gate is suicide, but there's an old tunnel under the palace. Kane knows the way. John nods, looking at Kane. "Lead." Kane grunts, "Don't expect me to hold your hand." The group heads to the tunnel, hidden beneath an ivy-covered hatch, and descends into darkness, smelling of damp earth and rotting wood. The tunnel leads them into the palace basement, where gray blades await. A fight erupts. John fires his pistol, each shot as precise as ever, dropping enemies one by one. Akira charges forward with her sword, her blade slicing through air and flesh with dance-like grace, leaving a bloody trail. Kane moves silently, his cane blade striking throats or chests, guided by hearing and instinct alone. The Ruska Roma fighters cover the rear, but 2 fall under a hail of bullets. Victor shouts, "They knew we were coming!" John frowns but presses on. He knows the high table is always a step ahead. The group fights upward through narrow stairs and marble corridors, where ancient frescoes contrast with the modern weapons in their attackers' hands. They burst into the main hall, where Eleonora stands alone, her guards spread throughout the palace. She doesn't look surprised, only casting a cold glance at John. "You're a plague, Wick, can't you just die?" John aims his pistol at her but doesn't fire. "Your people are dying because of you," he says hoarsely. Eleonora laughs, sharp and unpleasant. "My people? The high table is a tool, and you're a threat. I'll erase." She suddenly draws 2 thin daggers from her sleeves and lunges at John, her movements swift and deadly. A duel begins. John dodges her strikes, blocking with his pistol, but she wounds his shoulder, forcing him to drop it. Akira and Kane move to intervene, but John yells, "No, she's mine!" He grabs a dagger from the floor and fights Eleonora hand to hand. Their struggle a mix of brute force and cold calculation. The fight climaxes as John evades a lethal blow and drives the dagger into Eleonora's chest. She falls to her knees, her breathing ragged, but her eyes still burn with hatred. "You think this is the end?" she whispers, blood dripping from her mouth. "The high table is just the beginning, the order of eternity. They'll destroy you." Her words cut off as she collapses dead, a device in her hand flashing as it sends a signal somewhere far away. John stands over her body, breathing heavily, his suit soaked with blood, his and hers. Akira approaches, her sword lowered. "For my father," John nods, partly. Kane listens to the ensuing silence and mutters, "Something's coming, I hear them." Distant sirens and footsteps echo, new enemies approach. The group quickly leaves the hall, fighting through the remaining gray blades trying to stop them. Victor and another Ruska Roma fighter sacrifice themselves, holding off the pursuit so John, Akira, and Kane can escape. They reach the palace roof, where Rome stretches out below, lit by the night's lights. John gazes at the city, his face weary, but his eyes fierce with resolve. Akira places a hand on his shoulder. She mentioned an order. What is it? John shakes his head. I don't know, but we'll find out. Kane adds, if they're stronger than the table, we'll need allies. The trio descends the roof via an old ladder, leaving the palace behind. Fire erupts in the building, and Eleonora's signal has already reached unknown forces stirring in the shadows. After Eleonora Vespucci's defeat, the palace in Rome burns, its ancient walls crumbling under the fire's weight, smoke rising thickly into the night sky. John Wick, Akira, and Kane stand on a nearby hill, their silhouettes sharp against the flames. John clutches his wounded shoulder, his suit torn and blood-soaked, but his stance remains unyielding. Akira grips her sword, her face calm though anger still simmers within her for her father. Kane listens to the city's sounds, his cane resting on the ground, fingers nervously tightening on its handle. He senses the silence is fleeting. They've just toppled the high table, but Eleonora's words about the order of eternity linger like a poisonous whisper. John stares at the burning wreckage and says quietly, "She said, this isn't the end." Akira nods. If there's something bigger than the table, we're not ready. Kane adds hoarsely, we were never ready, but we're here. Their thoughts are interrupted by the distant rumble of engines. Black cars emerge from the darkness, their headlights slicing through the night, armed masked figures leaning from the windows, not gray blades, but new foes with cold, mechanical precision. These are the first agents of the Order of Eternity, summoned by Eleonora's dying signal. A brief but fierce fight ensues. John grabs a pistol from the ground and shoots, taking out the first car's driver, sending it crashing into a tree. Akira charges, her sword cutting down an attacker, but a bullet grazes her leg, and she falls with a roar of pain. Kane, relying on his hearing, dodges shots and drives his cane blade into another enemy's chest. But there are too many, and the trio retreats into the forest, branches whipping their faces as darkness becomes their only cover. They hide behind a fallen tree, breathing hard, as the cars stop, and a voice booms from a loudspeaker. John Wick, surrender, and your friends live. John grits his teeth, his gaze steely. They won't stop. Akira, bandaging her leg, mutters, then, we'll stop them. The next day, John, Akira and Kane return to Berlin, to the Ruska Roma base, where Maria greets them with a grim expression. She holds a tablet with a recording from her informants, Eleonora's voice, captured before her death, declaring the Order of Eternity is taking control, blaming the High Table's weakness on John. They're not just an organization, Maria explains, her voice trembling with tension. They're a shadow alliance that's manipulated wars, economies, everything for centuries. The High Table was their tool, and you, Giordani, broke it. John listens silently, his fingers clutching the Ruska Roma medal. Kane asks, how do we find them? Maria shakes her head. They don't hide in one place, they're everywhere, but we have allies, those who survived. She lists names, the Bowery King, Sophia, Winston. Akira stands, her leg bandaged but her resolve unbroken. Then we gather them. In New York, the Bowery King stands in his subway headquarters, his people prepping weapons as pigeons coo in their cages. He receives word from Ruska Roma of John's victory in Rome, and the new threat. Order of Eternity, huh? He laughs hoarsely, but his eyes blaze with fire. Let them come, I'm ready. He turns to Tick, bandaging his shoulder wound. Round up everyone still breathing. Wick's back, and we're with him. In Morocco, Sophia cleans a pistol in her Continental. Her dog's at her side, a note from John on the table with one word, prepare. She smirks crookedly, I'm always ready. In New York, Winston stands in the Continental, holding a whiskey glass, as Karen brings news. They're coming for us all. He nods. Then, we'll give them a fight. The scene returns to John, arriving at a quiet place, the cemetery where his wife Helen is buried. The sun sets, painting the sky crimson as the wind rustles the grass. He stands before her grave, holding the wedding ring he always carried. His face is etched with exhaustion, but his eyes glow with quiet determination. "I wanted peace, Helen," he whispers, his voice breaking. "But they won't let me have it." He squeezes the ring as if saying goodbye and tosses it into the earth by her grave, a gesture of letting go of the past he'd clung to so long. Footsteps approach from behind, and Akira draws near, her sword slung across her back. "They're coming for us," she says softly. John turns to her, his gaze firm. "Then we go after them." Kane joins them, his cane tapping the ground. "Time to end the wars, Wick." John nods. "No, time to start my own." Later, in New York, the Bowery King gathers his people in an abandoned lot. Sophia arrives from Morocco, her dogs barking, ready for battle. Winston steps out of the Continental, his suit pristine, but a pistol in hand instead of a glass. John, Akira, and Kane join them, the trio at the center, surrounded by allies. From the darkness emerge agents of the Order of Eternity, dozens of masked figures, heavily armed, their eyes cold and merciless. The king laughs. "Well, Wick, ready for another party?" John checks his pistol, always. Akira raises her sword, Kane grips his cane, Sophia shrugs off her coat, and Winston whispers, "For freedom." The fight begins. Gunfire rings out, swords flash, blood spills onto the asphalt. John moves like a shadow, each motion lethal. But his eyes hold no joy, only duty. The battle subsides. The allies stand amid the bodies of their enemies, wounded but alive. John gazes at the horizon, where the first rays of dawn pierce the clouds. Akira approaches. "Is this the end?" John shakes his head. "No, it's the beginning." He turns and walks away, his figure fading into the morning light, leaving his allies behind. The king's voice calls out, "Where you going, Wick?" But there's no answer, just the sound of his receding footsteps. In the final moment, Winston's whisper echoes, "He'll return when we're ready."